Hello everyone, my name is Oleksandr Zaluhovskyi and I'm a project manager with PortaOne. Today I would like to discuss a solution that service providers can use to make sure that users are easily and accurately charged in PortaSwitch for services provided using a third party, such as during international roaming, and also in cases that involve legacy equipment that does not support certain real-time charging protocols and instead can only provide a list of charges in a text file. Before we dive deep into this topic, let's quickly define a few of the terms we are going to talk about in this video. First, there is CDR, or Call Detail Record. CDRs capture all of the details of a call so it can be accurately charged, including things like who made the call, who was called, how long it lasted, and more. In the context of PortaSwitch and PortaBilling, which we are going to be discussing in this video, CDRs are also called xDRs, which stands for Extended Call Detail Record. xDRs are the same as CDRs, but they contain a bit more information. Finally, there is xDR Mediator, which is the utility that imports the xDRs into PortaSwitch, and which is the main topic of this video series. It was introduced back in 2016 with MR53. So basically, nowadays, when you hear PortaSwitch CDR import, this means importing raw CDRs from a third-party vendor into PortaSwitch using the xDR Mediator utility. Also, you might be familiar with the term CDR importer, which is our legacy utility that used to import xDRs into PortaSwitch on older PortaSwitch releases. This utility has now been replaced by the more flexible and powerful xDR Mediator utility, which also introduced a visual representation of the xDR import process on the web interface. So, what are the main challenges for service providers when it comes to importing CDRs, or in this case xDRs? Well, the biggest challenge is data conversion. Often, when a user is roaming, the vendor will provide the relevant phone numbers in a local format. For example, if the user is traveling in Washington state in the United States and makes a local call, the vendor might provide a phone number like 206-555-1234, with 206 as the local area code. From an international perspective, however, it would be easy for your system to misread those first two digits as the country code for Egypt, which is 20, and to charge for an overseas call. To be charged correctly, that phone number needs to be converted to what is called the E164 format, which allows for international routing. Since the country code for both the United States and Canada is 1, the E164 format for this number will be 1-206-555-1234. So how can you make sure that a given phone number in an xDR input field is converted correctly? For a simple conversion like this, you do it by defining some custom transformation rules using something called expressions. These expressions will be written in the Perl programming language and stored in a local configuration file. Stay tuned for other videos in this series where I'll explain this in more detail and show how it's done. For more complex data transformations, on the other hand, this can be implemented using a custom Perl module. For example, you can split a single XDR into several XDRs, or vice versa, you could merge several XDRs into a single XDR. Now, let me explain how the import of CDRs from a third-party vendor charging system works. When your user is using their phone while roaming, the vendor creates files that record that activity. Those files are your list of raw CDRs, or xDRs. The files are uploaded using FTP or, ideally, by secure FTP to a folder defined as incoming on the PortaSwitch server. This upload might be done by you or by the third-party vendor, or the xDR Mediator utility can transfer the files automatically from the vendor's system, which is a process I will describe a bit later on. When a source file with these xDRs appears in the incoming folder, the xDR Mediator will process the file. In other words, it will parse the xDR data and apply the custom transformation rules that you have set to make sure the data is converted correctly. Then, the xDR Mediator will arrange the xDRs from one or several files into collections, or batches of xDRs. The xDR mediator then sends these xDR collections to the PortaBilling online charging system, or OCS, using the Radius protocol. For each xDR, PortaBilling identifies the account that consumed the service and calculates the charged amount according to your defined rates. Or, if you do not have your own defined rates for the specific charge, it will use the total amount charged by the third-party vendor. Finally, PortaBilling adds this resulting xDR to the appropriate customer account. And now, as promised, let me describe the complete xDR import process step by step. In general, the xDR mediator consists of three main components. First, there is the extraction utility, which parses input data from the source files, performs the data conversion according to your custom transformation rules, and then arranges the xDRs into collections. Next, there is the xDR storage, which stores those xDRs collections. And finally, there is the rating utility, which sends the xDRs collections to PortaBilling for processing through the Radius protocol and receives notifications about the import status. When it's time to import an xDR, the xDR mediator takes 9 steps. In step 1, the source file with the raw xDRs is saved to the incoming folder. The system is constantly monitoring the incoming folder for new source files. Whenever it detects a new source file, it first checks whether that file is a duplicate. In other words, it makes sure that the file has not already been processed. Sometimes a vendor might send the same file more than once, so that is a necessary precaution to make sure the customer is not double charged. Once it confirms that it is not a duplicate, the xDR mediator will queue the file for processing. If there are several source files in the folder, the mediator utility will order them alphabetically by source file name and then add them to the end of the queue. In step 2, the extraction utility extracts the xDR data in the source file using one of the available modules, for example a CSV module. Each parsed xDR is represented as a set of attribute value pairs, like you see on your screen. In step 3, the extraction utility moves the file from the incoming folder to the processed files folder. In step 4, the extraction utility transforms the xDR data according to your defined custom transformation rules. For example, it translates the CLD or Cold Station ID value that is in third-party vendor-specific format into the E164 format. In step 5, the extraction utility takes each xDR and checks to see if there is another xDR that should be merged with. It does this by checking the aggregation key value. In step 6, the extraction utility moves the xDRs into the collections that have been created in the xDR storage. In step 7, the rating utility monitors the xDR storage for ready-to-import collections. When it finds them, it starts processing them. In step 8, the rating utility sends those ready-to-import individual xDRs from the relevant collection into PortaBilling using the Radius protocol. Note that in addition to the customer's xDR, PortaBilling will also calculate the charges on the vendor's side to accurately reflect the cost. Finally, in step 9, PortaBilling saves the final xDR to the database under the specific account, reseller or vendor, and their balance is updated. At the same time, the import status of each xDR, in other words, if that xDR has been either imported or rejected, is sent back to the rating utility. If you're wondering why an xDR would be rejected and what happens when it is, let me explain this for you now. If there was an error during the rating process on the PortaBilling side, for example, if no matching PortaBilling account was found, PortaBilling will return an error to the rating utility, which will save the error status of the xDR in the xDR storage. The corresponding xDRs in the collection are marked as rejected and are stored for a PortaBilling administrator to review later. The administrator can view the imported xDR collections directly on the PortaBilling web interface. And if any xDRs that have been processed with an error are present, the administrator can adjust the settings as needed. For example, by adding the missing account to PortaBilling. Then it can rerun the rating process for the xDRs. This way, the administrator only needs to reprocess the few erroneous xDRs, rather than throwing out the whole xDR collection that may contain hundreds of them and reprocessing them all, which would generate an excessive load on the system. Now, let's break down this xDR reprocessing process step by step. Say an administrator views the collections and discovers some rejected xDRs. In step 1, the administrator checks the PortaBilling settings and finds out that, for example, the xDRs are related to a new corporate account that has not been added yet. The administrator adds the missing accounts. In step 2, the administrator selects the xDRs with the rejected status and then clicks Reprocess to rerun the rating process on the PortaBilling web interface. For step 3, the xDRs are marked with To-Do status in the xDR storage, and the appropriate xDR collection is marked as Updated. This status is interpreted as ready to import by the rating utility. In step 4, the rating utility places the ready to import xDR collection back into the processing queue. The rating utility takes the ready to import xDRs, which are now marked with the status To Do, and resends them from the appropriate xDR collection over to PortaBilling. Any xDRs in the collection that were already imported successfully are ignored. To sum up, the xDR Mediator is an extremely flexible utility that we designed to help telcos import CDRs from external sources into PortaSwitch for accurate billing. This flexibility is achieved thanks to the ability to add custom transformation logic in the Perl programming language to handle any CDR format a third-party system will send to your system for import. More than 30 telcos who own PortaSwitch are already using an xDR Mediator, and it's ready to handle your needs as well. In one of the projects I have been involved with, in which CDRs needed to be imported from the Sprint operator, the xDR Mediator proved itself to be capable of handling approximately 600 xDRs per second, and that's not even the limit. In our upcoming videos, I'll share with you more details about a few other real-life use cases for the xDR Mediator utility, and I'll walk you through a demonstration of the transformation logic itself as well. For now, thank you for watching, and I hope you found this information useful. If you are interested in using the xDR Mediator in your own system, please reach out to our PortaOne team using the contact details in the description of this video. And I'll see you in the next video.